I remember signing up for that new mega competition almost like a joke. My roommate sent me a link at 2 a.m., and we laughed about the idea of winning $5 million in some epic, game-changing reality show run by a famous YouTuber. Everyone online was freaking out about it, claiming it'd be bigger and wilder than anything else. And, well, I needed the money, so I filled out a form on my phone, never guessing it'd lead me into one of the most intense nightmares of my life. Once I got the acceptance email, I felt a weird mix of thrill and dread. They flew me and about 1,000 other contestants to some huge studio complex out in the middle of nowhere. The place was like a mini city, complete with dorm-style bunks, a mess hall, and massive sets for all the challenges. Cameras were everywhere, on cranes, on tracks, strapped to staffers' chests, so they could catch every angle of our reactions. Everyone wore matching t-shirts with our contestant numbers, and every day, the host boomed about how this was the biggest single cash prize in TV history. $5 million on the line, man, that's life-changing. Right away, something felt a bit off. The staff was overly cheery, passing out forms to sign about confidentiality and extreme risk, telling us not to leak any footage or talk to outside media. I figured that was normal for a big show, though. The vibe at first was super hyped. Bright neon sets, loud music, a DJ blasting pop hits. The host popped in, all smiles and jokes, telling us how insane this competition would be, how we'd face challenges unlike anything seen before. We cheered, clinging to the dream of that grand prize. Day one's challenge was silly enough. People in giant hamster ball contraptions, rolling around a field to find hidden tokens. Half the contestants were cut by the end of it, like 500 gone just like that, because they missed the tokens or messed up. They rushed them away so fast, I barely caught a glimpse of the door they used to exit. The staff said those folks were escorted off-site. That left the rest of us feeling both lucky and unsettled. But the show pushed forward, no time to mourn the losers. On day 2, the tone shifted. The next challenge was called Tower of Blocks. We had to stack these massive foam blocks to build a structure. If your team's tower was below a certain height by the buzzer, you were all out. The foam blocks were super heavy, though. Something about the weight didn't match the bright, happy theme music playing overhead. People started straining and sweating like crazy, a few collapsing from exhaustion. Medical staff hovered at the edges but rarely stepped in unless someone literally couldn't stand. I met a guy named Marcus there who seemed friendly, telling me about his family back home. We teamed up, busting our backs to hoist those giant blocks. By the time we finished, our arms shook uncontrollably. We did well enough to pass, but I saw a whole group fail. Some cried, others shouted that the challenge was rigged. Security ushered them off. I noticed the staff giving stern looks to contestants who tried to complain on camera. At night, I couldn't sleep, remembering how quick the show was to dump people as soon as they messed up. Day 3 turned even darker. The organizers introduced a new twist: hidden sabotage. We were told one random contestant had the power to instantly eliminate another player if they found a certain key in the challenge zone. That cranked up paranoia big time. Folks started side-eyeing each other, whispering conspiracies about who might be the chosen saboteur. We were herded into a half-built set made to look like a city street. Our task? Run around collecting puzzle pieces scattered in fake storefronts. The host cackled as we scrambled over debris, worried we might get targeted by the saboteur. In one corner, I saw 2 contestants fighting over a puzzle piece. The cameras zoomed in, stoking the drama. Suddenly, a staff member stepped in, whispering for them to settle it quickly. The tension was insane. Like a reality show on steroids, no sense of real boundaries. After that day's filming, I was walking back to the dorms with Marcus, who was quiet and shaky. He muttered about hearing rumors that, at night, staff took certain problematic players to a side building for hush-hush talks. Some returned looking totally freaked out. Others never came back. I tried to brush it off, but fear rooted in my gut. This show was too big, too intense, and the staff's forced smiles didn't hide the cold efficiency behind the scenes. Then came the night I discovered something truly unsettling. I needed to grab some fresh water from a supply station after hours. The corridor was mostly dark, cameras probably not rolling at that time. Turning a corner, I stumbled upon a production assistant flipping through a thick binder of contestant profiles. She gasped, slamming it shut. "You can't be here," she hissed, pushing me away. I caught a glimpse of my name in there, with notes and willingness to comply scrawled. Next to some names, I saw cryptic tags like uncooperative monitor. She forced me down a different path, spitting out, "Don't wander at night." I told Marcus, who looked pale, but he only shrugged hopelessly. We were in too deep. The next day's challenge involved a literal maze of rotating walls with a countdown clock. Teams had to find the exit or get locked in when time ran out. One team got trapped, pounding the walls and screaming as the lights shut off. We never saw them again. The host made a joke about harsh endings, then the cameras cut. We all stood there, jaws on the floor, but the staff just corralled us onward, urging us to smile for the next segment. At night, rumors of wrongdoing exploded in hush-hush circles. Some folks wanted to protest or quit, but the staff reminded them. Leaving means zero payout and potentially a breach of contract. The $5 million lure still dangled. People rationalized, saying, "We just have to survive a bit more. It's only a show, right?" But the show's thirst for extremes felt sadistic. On day 6, the final 4 challenges kicked off. The host crowed about how few of us remained. Barely 70 out of the original 1,000. My muscles ached, my spirit drained. They made us do a blindfolded balancing act on narrow beams suspended over a foam pit. If you slipped, you fell into the pit and got eliminated, but the pit was basically old foam blocks with a few sagging crash pads. A couple folks emerged limping badly. Staff hustled them away, not letting them speak on camera. I saw tears. That kind of pain was no joke. Marcus tried to stay positive, saying, "We're almost at the end," but I felt my moral compass screaming that this wasn't just a tough game. It was borderline abuse. The crew shot me suspicious looks if I hesitated or asked if everyone was okay. The vibe was, keep going or get removed. Finally, day 7 arrived, the big finale. A stage bigger than any we'd seen. The host proudly reminded the world that one lucky winner would walk away with $5 million, the largest single prize in show history. Cameras circled us like vultures. The final challenge was some monstrous obstacle course combined with a puzzle-luck twist. Random sections would collapse or spin, forcing people to watch out for each other or risk sabotage. I can't describe the chaos that followed. I saw one contestant get slammed by a rotating beam, flipping backward onto a hard platform. The staff hardly paused filming. Another had their puzzle pieces snatched away by a frantic neighbor who wanted to sabotage. The host found it hilarious. The crowd, a small live audience, presumably VIPs, roared as if we were gladiators. Marcus and I tried to look out for each other, but eventually we got split. The shrieks of pain or shock from others all blurred into a single roar. A final buzzer sounded, and I realized I'd been outmaneuvered by 2 contestants who formed a mini-alliance. The staff ushered me aside, leading me down a backstage hallway. I felt shock, anger, and relief swirl in my head. They took me to a cramped room, took my mic, forced me to sign more paperwork. I tried asking, "What about Marcus? The others? Are they okay?" But the staff just smiled blandly. "They're still in the game, sir." A guard escorted me out of the building. No chance to say goodbye or gather my stuff. They shoved me into a shuttle van with tinted windows. We rolled away from that monstrous set, the entire ordeal behind me in a cloud of dust. In the van, a production assistant stared at me from the front seat, not saying a word. My phone was returned once we left the premises, but I had no signals to contact anyone. For an hour, I sat in stunned silence until they dropped me off at a random parking lot near a cheap motel. The assistant said, "Your flight's booked for tomorrow. Don't talk to the press." Then she drove off. I collapsed onto that motel bed, numb, reeling from how quickly I'd gone from potential millionaire to chewed-up discard. My bruises throbbed, but the real pain was mental. I'd witnessed how fear, greed, and huge prize money can twist people into desperate versions of themselves, and how the production staff capitalized on that drama. The show would likely edit it into a highlight reel of comedic misfortunes and exciting moments, never letting the public see our real terror or the harsh off-camera side. Even now, I wake up sweating at night, recalling that final fun challenge with its savage collisions and screams echoing off metal walls. I wonder if Marcus got out unscathed or if he's stuck in their weird winner-loser limbo. The last thing I saw was a swirl of confetti and a few battered contestants fighting for that final lock. I sometimes check the internet for updates, but the show remains tightly controlled, each episode polished to look epic and hilarious. Any sign of real injury scrubbed away. I learned that behind the slick branding, beyond the promise of an insane new show, lurks a brutal mechanism designed to exploit our hopes for a massive payday. We let ourselves be herded like pawns, ignoring red flags in exchange for a shot at a dream. Sure, the host might give away wads of cash, but the bigger cost is in broken bodies and shattered spirits, hush-hush NDAs, and the memory of how people turned on each other under that relentless camera gaze. So, yes, it was insane, but not in the fun, over-the-top way I expected. It was more of a cold, corporate carnival of chaos. The money might change one winner's life, but the rest of us left with bruises, nightmares, and the realization that reality TV can push folks beyond their limits for the sake of a spectacle. I only hope the viewers see some glimmer of that truth between the jump cuts and upbeat music. Yet deep down, I suspect they won't. I never thought I'd see the day where I'd be battling 100 strangers in some weird desert obstacle course for a shot at $5 million. But that's exactly how I ended up in a rickety bus, bouncing down a dusty road somewhere in the southwest, sweltering under the midday sun. According to the show's hype, we were heading toward one of the biggest reality challenges in history, hosted by that ultra-famous internet personality known for insane giveaways and massive stunts. The catch? Everything we did was recorded, everything was timed, and absolutely nothing about it felt normal. I'd signed up online with zero expectations. Maybe I'd get lucky, I told myself. I'd never had much luck before, but hope is a strange motivator. They told me, "Congrats, you've made it to round 2. Pack for the desert. Bring white clothes to reflect the heat." White? They said it was for safety, but come on. It also looked dramatic on camera. All of us in bright white t-shirts trudging through the dust. The production crew definitely wanted those epic wide shots. When the bus finally stopped, we got out into a fenced-off compound that resembled a small festival site. Trailers, tents, towers of scaffolding. Cameras panned everywhere, capturing our tired faces. A booming voice on loudspeakers introduced the next phase of beast-scale competition. The crew herded us through a quick check-in, scanning our contestant badges and handing each of us a water bottle with some sponsor's logo. They said, "Drink up, it's hot out here," but gave no hints about what we'd face next. My group had maybe 120 people. Another group had 120, and so on, who knows how many total by now. We were told the first day's challenge was a timed gauntlet run across open terrain. We lined up at the starting line. The host himself, smiling, charismatic, wearing a wide-brimmed hat to shield from the sun, explained the rules. We dashed through a half-mile course littered with obstacles. Tires to hop through, walls to climb, pits to jump. The slowest half would be eliminated immediately. He hyped it up. "This is your shot at that sweet 5 million. Everyone cheered, but I sensed tension in the crowd. The run began. A horn blared. We sprinted into the dust. At first, it felt like a typical obstacle race. Lots of pushing, shoving, folks stumbling. The temperature was brutal, though, and I started feeling dizzy. A few staffers stood on sidelines, filming or holding walkie-talkies, but no one offered water or a break. People who collapsed were simply carried off by a small medical team. By the time I finished, lungs burning, I saw dozens sprawled out on the ground, disqualified. The host breezed by, saying, "Thanks for giving it your all," while cameras zoomed in on every exhausted face. That night, They bussed the survivors to a makeshift camp with large tents for sleeping. A faint smell of disinfectant hung in the air. We were too beat to care about comfort. I collapsed onto a cot, arms and legs shaking from the day's heat. Around me, quiet murmurs. Why is this so intense so soon? They're really serious about cutting half of us. We tried cracking jokes to lighten the mood, but everyone was spooked, uncertain if they'd survive the next challenge. Before sunrise, a staffer rattled us awake. Get up, we're moving. They marched us out to a bigger fenced area under blazing floodlights. When dawn broke, we saw a sprawling structure of scaffolding and ropes, something that looked like an enormous jungle gym. The host, standing on a raised platform, grinned and announced, "Time for the tower climb." We'd be split into small teams, each forced to climb up and dismantle certain sections to retrieve tokens. The top 5 teams would be safe. The rest get axed from the show. A cold knot formed in my gut. Some parts of that tower looked dangerously high, and the safety nets below were suspiciously thin. Our team had me, 2 tall guys, and a petite woman named Rosa. She told us she was here to help her family with medical bills. We all had our reasons for chasing the prize. We clung to the idea that if we cooperated, maybe we'd push through. But the challenge was chaos. Ropes tangled, metal beams wobbled, and we had to move carefully under time pressure. One misstep, you'd fall. The cameras loved it, zooming in every time someone's foot slipped. I almost lost my grip halfway up, my hands coated in sweat. Rosa saved me by yanking me back onto the beam. I gasped out a thank you. No staff member lifted a finger to help. They just filmed. Teams who lagged behind looked panicked, yelling at each other, sometimes yanking beams or tokens from each other's grasp. It was pure desperation. People started ignoring safety instructions, stepping on unstable surfaces. I glimpsed a contestant tumble off the side. She landed on a net, but her scream said she was injured. Staff hustled her away, and we never saw her again. Possibly disqualified, possibly in dire condition. The host's voice soared overhead. 5 minutes left. Folks, make it count or you go home with nothing. That laughter in his tone rattled me. We made it in time, snatching enough tokens to rank us 4th. We breathed a collective sigh of relief. But looking around, we saw the faces of those who failed. Some sobbed, others raged. They were escorted behind a barrier, presumably to be removed from the competition. The host waved them off, telling viewers it was just part of the game. My stomach twisted at how callous it felt. Night brought more rumors. Someone overheard a staff conversation about cracking down on troublemakers. Another said the next challenge might push folks to betray each other for instant cash bribes. Anxiety loomed large. The show thrived on drama, pitting us against each other psychologically. Sure enough, the next morning, we found ourselves at a betrayal booth challenge. The host explained we'd be paired with another contestant, locked in a small booth, given a stash of money. If we pressed the red button, we kept the money, but our partner got eliminated. If neither pressed it, we both advanced. If both pressed it, we both were out. It was the classic prisoner's dilemma, ramped up with TV flair and a camera capturing our every eye twitch. I ended up paired with an older guy named Jordan. We barely knew each other. The host grinned and said, "You have 1 minute to decide. $50,000 is on that table if you press the button." Jordan looked at me, face pale. "I need this for my kid," he whispered. I had my own reasons. Student loan debt, ailing parents. The production's tension soared. We sat there in sweaty silence. The cameras seemed to get closer, as if feasting on our moral agony. Finally, I said, "We can trust each other, right? We'll both move on." Jordan nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. The minute ticked down. 0. We both kept our hands off the button. The door opened, staff members checking the readout. A small, disappointed sigh from someone behind the camera. Maybe they wanted more drama, but we advanced. My heart hammered with relief, though I felt guilty for how close I'd come to pressing it. Just 1 second more, I might have broken. Others weren't so lucky. Cries of betrayal echoed around the set. A staffer I recognized told me quietly, "They love these heartbreak moments for the final cut." Ratings gold. The cruelty behind the show's grin was impossible to deny now. By that night, maybe only 40 or 50 of us remained out of the original swarm. We hardly spoke. Everyone was traumatized by the intensity of the challenges and the manipulative twists. No one dared openly revolt, though. The NDAs, the fear, and the faint but real possibility of winning a life-changing fortune kept us docile. On the final day, the big showdown was teased. We gathered in a massive enclosed stage rigged with lights and confetti cannons. The host hyped it as the ultimate test of endurance, strategy, and guts. We were told that at random intervals, huge mechanical arms would swing across the arena, knocking players down. If you got knocked down, you were out. The last person standing would claim 5 million. Just hearing that gave me chills, like a twisted carnival game scaled to monstrous proportions. We started the final. The mechanical arms whirred to life, sweeping unpredictably. Everyone scrambled, diving to avoid being clobbered. The host's commentary boomed overhead. Who will claim the fortune? Let's see if luck or skill prevails. Cameras zipped around on wires, capturing every near miss. My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. I dodged a swinging arm by inches, nearly lost my footing on a slippery patch of metal flooring. I saw contestants get slammed, yelps of pain overshadowed by the host's excited narration. In the end, I got clipped by a smaller arm that I didn't see coming. It smacked me sideways, and I crashed onto the floor with a metallic thud. My vision blurred, my ribs aching. Immediately, staff rushed in, not to help but to drag me off the field so they could keep filming the survivors. The host gave a quick thanks for playing, then refocused on whoever was left. Adrenaline and heartbreak churned inside me. My shot at the money was gone. They tossed me into a side area where a medic took a quick glance, slapped an ice pack on my side, and told me to sign a release form about my injuries. I overheard screams from the arena as the final few players fought for that last slot. I couldn't see it, but I could guess the chaos. The staff confiscated my mic, my ID badge, and escorted me out. They barely met my eyes, as if ashamed or just too busy to care. I ended up slumped against a trailer, listening to the roars and booms from inside. Eventually, an assistant signaled for me to board a shuttle van. That was it, game over. I never learned who won or how they made it out. The entire fiasco hammered home that this epic competition was basically a brutal spectacle, sacrificing our well-being for the sake of shocking content. The next day, they dropped me at a bus station with a courtesy ticket home. I tried to process everything. I dozed off on the bus, waking now and then to flashbacks of people shrieking in that final challenge, the host's booming voice egging us on. And the painful truth sank in: we were just fodder for a viral show. The public would see a slickly edited highlight reel, calling it the most insane contest ever, and I'd remain a footnote, not even a cameo in the final cut. Sometimes I dream about returning to that set as if to demand accountability. Then I remind myself it's pointless. The show's NDAs and big money overshadow any protest. Still, I can't forget the terrified faces, the manipulative challenges, and the dread in my gut every morning we were forced to compete. For me, it ended with bruised ribs and a shattered trust in what these so-called entertaining events do to ordinary people. I share this story in the faint hope that someone out there sees past the hype. Sure, $5 million is huge, but the real cost was the humiliating, painful grind of fear, exhaustion, and exploitation. Behind the bright lights and confetti, an ugly machine devours contestants' dignity and spits them out. And if you're lucky enough to stand at the end, that victory might come drenched in everyone else's misery. So, yeah, the show was insane, just not in the fun way they marketed. Next time someone invites me to a large-scale, life-changing contest, I'll remember the claustrophobic corridors, the manipulative bribes, and the relentless mechanical arms swinging to knock us out. I'll remember how a couple of staffers seemed almost apologetic, like they knew it was messed up, and I'll politely decline, preserving my sanity over the slim chance of rolling the dice for a chunk of that alluring, but dangerous, prize. I first heard about the big new show from my coworker, who wouldn't stop raving about how someone was going to walk away with $5 million. The rumor was that a famous internet host, a flamboyant person known for over-the-top stunts, was launching a grand experiment. Gather hundreds of people, lock them into a series of crazy challenges, and watch them fight for life-changing money. My coworker said, "You gotta try out. If you win, you're set for life." She hyped it up like it was a guaranteed golden ticket. Me, I was skeptical, but rent was overdue, and hope can be a powerful nudge. So I applied, telling myself it was just a shot in the dark. A few weeks later, I got the acceptance email and nearly dropped my phone. My coworker laughed, saying she'd pass the audition next time. Meanwhile, I was whisked off to a giant production site near some old farmland, like a pop-up city built just for filming. Cameras everywhere, huge neon signs, costume racks, and a swarm of staff scurrying around with headsets. They handed each contestant a big white t-shirt with a bold black number on the back, telling us we had to wear it every day for the cameras to identify us. That first day was all excitement. Upbeat music, bright lights, the host strolling around, cracking jokes. Everyone was starry-eyed, fantasizing about being the lucky one. But the moment the first challenge began, I realized it wasn't all sunshine. They had us in a team puzzle race, building towering structures from unwieldy blocks. The trick? Only the top half of teams advanced, the rest were out. People panicked, shrieking instructions that clashed, toppling blocks, cursing each other for messing up. We were strangers forced to collaborate under intense pressure. Whenever a block fell, the host cackled about epic fails, urging the cameras to zoom in. The tension soared, and by the end, more than 200 contestants vanished behind a closed gate, their dreams cut short. I tried to see if any staff offered them comfort or explanation, but it seemed they were hustled away swiftly. We never heard from them again. That night, the staff led the survivors, including me, to a cramped dorm area. Basic bunk beds, minimal privacy, no personal electronics allowed. They reasoned it was to keep the show spoiler-free, but it felt more like they wanted total control. Roommates changed randomly each day, which made it impossible to build strong bonds or alliances. Everyone was constantly suspicious, wondering if the person next to them would sabotage them in the next event. The host, though smiling on camera, acted distant off-camera, rarely engaging in casual talk. Everything was for show. Day 2 introduced a challenge that tested speed and stamina in a massive labyrinth. Each corridor was loaded with dead ends, bricked-up doors, and pitfalls. If you triggered a trap, you'd drop into a spongy pit, officially called harmless, but contestants emerged bruised and shaken. The labyrinth's echo magnified every yelp or scream, making it feel like a horror maze. We had to race to retrieve flags from hidden alcoves. Some players got locked in if they couldn't solve the path. Their muffled banging on the walls haunted me. The staff insisted we keep going, while the host assured viewers that nobody was truly trapped forever, just until they were out of the show. Chilling, right? That night, a friend I'd made, a quiet man named Raphael, went missing. He'd helped me navigate part of the labyrinth, so I was worried. The dorm bed assigned to him stayed empty. When I asked staff, they just said, "He's no longer in the competition," and moved on. No goodbye, no closure. My stomach twisted with dread, but the competition marched on mercilessly. On day 3, we faced a moral dilemma round. The host declared we'd be split into groups of 5, each group locked in a glass-walled room. In the center was a big button labeled $100K. If anyone pressed it, they'd get the money, but the entire group was eliminated from the main $5 million chase. We had 15 minutes, press or not press. Of course, the cameras ate this up, zooming on anxious faces as we debated. My group was a mix. 2 guys who swore they were in it for the big prize, a woman who seemed half tempted to just secure the smaller cash, and me, grappling with fear of losing everything. The final person, a twitchy college kid, kept glancing at the clock. We argued for 10 minutes straight. Some said, "We can't settle for a measly $100,000 when there's $5 million at stake." Others hissed, "Better to walk away with something than end up with 0. The tension boiled. In the last 60 seconds, nobody moved. Then, with 2 seconds left, the college kid lunged for the button. Panicked, I jumped, managing to grab his arm. The clock hit 0. We were safe, but the host's voice crackled in over the loudspeaker, congratulating us on our unity, calling it riveting drama. After they unlocked the room, I realized I was shaking. People outside cheered at our near meltdown. The show thrived on these emotional clashes. We kept going. More days, more trials. Our group shrank. The dorms grew emptier. The host introduced a gambling element on day 5. Players could cash out at any time for a fraction of the prize, but that guaranteed they left. Some took the deal, exhausted physically and mentally. Meanwhile, the show's staff became cooler, more businesslike, ensuring we understood we had to sign NDAs about production secrets. We'd sometimes see paramedics quietly whisk away someone who collapsed from stress or dehydration. The host had a big grin on camera, but behind the scenes, he rarely spoke, presumably to keep the mystique. On day 6, after a savage obstacle run in a mud-filled arena that left me battered and nearly delirious, I found a crack in the set's backdrop. Curious, I slipped behind it, discovering a small storage area. Dozens of sealed bins lined the walls, each labeled with names or contestant numbers. I recognized one label as a friend's number who vanished days ago. Before I could open it, a production assistant rushed in, shouting, "Unauthorized area." They escorted me out with a veiled threat. "Stick to the show flow if you don't want trouble." My heart pounded. I had no clue what was in those bins. Personal items or something far worse. The staff's anxious reaction spoke volumes. Finally, the show announced its final day. The host boomed with excitement. Just 20 remain. One epic challenge stands between you and $5 million. The set was transformed into a giant stage ringed by cameras on zip lines, overhead crane shots, the works. We stood on separate platforms, each rigged to drop if we messed up. The challenge: guess correct answers to bizarre trivia questions while balancing on a narrow ledge. Answer wrong, lose your footing, you drop. The host promised a jaw-dropping finale. My head spun from exhaustion, but the lure of that money still glowed. As the final round started, each wrong answer triggered a platform's tilt. People scrambled, arms flailing. A few dropped to safety nets below, but the nets didn't look too secure. The host's commentary sounded gleeful as we panicked. I managed to guess enough right to stay stable, but then a sudden twist. The host offered a golden button to any of us. Press it, and we automatically eliminate half the remaining players, doubling the potential winnings if we survive the final question. The crowd outside, a small VIP audience, roared for drama. One competitor, a man named Dean, actually reached for it. Gasps all around. I shouted, "You'll cut us all for greed?" He hesitated, tears in his eyes. The host teased him, "No risk, no reward. This is the biggest show on earth, after all." In that moment, the tension was so thick I could barely breathe. Dean let go, stepping back. The host cackled. Such restraint. The final question came, and my mind blurred with fear. I answered incorrectly, feeling my platform tilt. My stomach lurched as I fell onto the net below, scraping my arm. Cameras rushed in. I was out. The show's security hurried me off while the finale continued for those still standing. The roar of the crowd blended with my pounding heart. I watched from a side monitor as the last few fought for that final pot. Then a bright flash of confetti and streamers signaled we had a winner. The host paraded around with them, blasting triumphant music. The rest of us, injured or eliminated, sank into the background like props tossed aside. In the aftermath, staff shoved a form at me, reminding me of my NDA obligations. They offered a small comfort stipend for medical bills, but I saw some contestants leaving limping or crying. No real sense of closure. The show would air cut-down episodes soon, heavily edited to highlight the fun and craziness, but not the harsh conditions, the mental breakdowns, or the hushed threats from staff. I hopped on a bus they arranged, quiet tears streaking my dusty face. Another contestant on the same bus just stared out the window, eyes hollow, refusing to talk about it. Once we were away from the set, the host's voice boomed in my memory. praising our dedication. That word felt hollow now. I recalled the near betrayals, the manipulations, the casual disregard for injuries. Sure, one person might go home with a massive check, but the rest of us got a front row seat to how easily a show can push boundaries and break spirits for the sake of epic content. These days, whenever I see a trailer or highlight for that big new show, I can't help cringing. People online comment how awesome it looks, how they'd love to be part of such a legendary competition. They see the glam, the final big reveal, and the comedic montages of stumbles. They don't see the tearful faces late at night, the suspicious handling of injured players, or the staff's tense hush. I used to love watching wild game shows. Now I feel a chill, remembering how far a production can go to feed the beast of entertainment. Yeah, 5 million is an insane prize, but what I learned is that chasing it can lead you into corners you never anticipated. Corners where dignity, compassion, and sanity get tossed aside. I guess you can call it horror in the most human sense. A slow, grinding fear that the cameras don't show. A terror that maybe these big-time creators know exactly how to exploit every ounce of desperation we have for a shot at changing our lives. And we, in our eagerness to escape our regular drudgery, walk right into their hands. I'm out now, physically okay aside from some scars and a renewed caution about trusting anything that dangles life-changing money with no accountability. I hope people read my words and get a glimpse of the reality behind that epic hype. It's not all high fives and confetti. Sometimes, it's just a nightmare in a bright neon box.